Welcome to the virtual audience of Inclusive Africa 2022. We're really thrilled you can join us for this virtual only session. We have some of our watch party representatives ready. Those of you who haven't identified yourself or joined yet, please do so. So we have Melanie from South Africa, and Suleiman from Nigeria, ready to participate in the conversation. I'm hoping we also have a colleague from Nudipu in Uganda, and Ethiopia, Ghana, and Zambia. And if there's time and others want to join, then please let me know in the chat, and we'll see if we can bring you into the discussion. So that's it from me. Over to you for some thoughts and discussions on assistive technology policy and accessibility in innovation in Africa, and some reflections perhaps on what you've all heard this morning.
Okay, maybe we should, I suggest we'll do a quick introduction. Maybe Christopher, you'll be first.
Oh, I've been talking enough today, but for those of you who were fortunate enough to miss my talk, my name is Christopher, and I lead accessibility and disability inclusion for Google in EMEA. My responsibility is Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. Yuval?
Well, I'm happy to be connected far away from your conference. I'm Yuval Wagner, bald white man, brown eyes, wearing a green shirt. And I'm the founder and chairperson of Access Israel, that implements and making Israel fully accessible for all disabilities in all areas of life. And I'm pretty much here because we did something very interesting regarding digital accessibility in Israel, that maybe through this talk I will share some of it. Okay, you, Christopher, bon appetit. Enjoy lunch. So maybe we'll start while you're eating with an quick introduction of those that came aboard. And we'll start with ladies first, with Melanie. Please share a little about you, about your organization, and later on we'll jump to some other questions.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so I'm Melanie Liver. I'm the Secretariat of the South African Disability Alliance, and I'm also a person of short stature. Okay, for a description, I'm a person of short stature. I'm Caucasian, I've got brown hair, I'm wearing glasses, and I'm wearing a pink jacket. Yeah, so that is me, and I'm the Secretariat of the South African Disability Alliance. I'm also the chairperson of a quite new organization called Equal Citizens of Short Stature, Southern Africa. So we have ASARA is an umbrella organization for all the national disability organizations. And yeah, so our aim, and we are so happy to partner with Enable and to contribute to the success of this amazing conference. The Alliance is representing all the national disability organizations across the spectrum, including all types of disabilities. And yeah, so maybe we can discuss later things that we have in common.
Thank you very much. I'll continue with the introduction while Christopher will eat, and then he will go to the second round of questions. He will do the smart questions, I'll do the simple ones. Mr. Suleiman, how do you say it? Suleiman? Suleiman? It just came up. You're on mute, Mr. Suleiman Yuja. You are on mute, maybe.
I've asked to unmute. Suleiman from Uganda, are you able to join us?
So maybe, Melanie, can you come back again?
Sure.
Melanie, while we establish new connection with Suleiman from Uganda, maybe we can continue with you. You are the lucky one, you get more time.
Okay,
So
so
let's after you said about the organization, let's go a little one more step into the technologies. Maybe start with a brief overview about the overall status of digital accessibility in your country.
okay. So in South Africa, we are grateful. You know, we had a lot of progress that's been made in terms of digital accessibility in general, but it still remains out of reach for the majority of persons with disabilities in South Africa, as I'm sure is in Africa. And this is the driving force behind our continued efforts to improve in every way possible. So our view is that digital accessibility is not only nice to have, or it's a necessity, it's actually the lack thereof is actually constitutes to a violation of the rights of persons with disabilities. So that actually brings it into alignment with the UN CRPD. We would really like to see more political will from government side to push this forward. And accessibility is not only informative and digital, like Lebohang said earlier also, assistive devices, wheelchairs, seating, all of that is linked to accessibility in the long run. So that is things that we transport, especially, is very problematic in South Africa. So I think what would also be nice in South Africa that we are lacking severely is that we don't have a unified response system, you know, to where we can contribute concrete, contribute towards making our DPOs, linking them up with the big tech companies to evaluate the systems and the software that's available. This is especially true for Africa. So we can contribute greatly to that. And so that is where I think it is important for the big tech companies like Microsoft, like Google, like all of them to link up with DPOs on the ground level more, because that is where the end users are.
Okay, thank you. Suleiman, you are still on mute. Can you change that? And can you introduce yourself?
Do we have an interpreter? Suleiman is deaf.
Yeah, I got it.
Do we have an interpreter? I just sent a note to the team. Okay, I'll continue to talk with enable folks to see if we can get an interpreter on the call.
We are improvising here.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Suleiman is adding to the chat, perhaps.
Melanie,
So
when you talk about digital, now he's on. Mr. Suleiman, can you hear me? Can you please describe yourself?
Please, can you mute yourself if you're not talking?
The noise is coming from Suleiman. Do we have an interpreter? Christopher, by any chance you have some support over there?
I'll try and reach out. I'll continue to reach out to the team by the interpreter.
Austin, are you by any chance?
So I can ask one of the sign interpreters to join.
Okay. So,
Please do.
Christopher, do you would like to ask maybe in the meantime we'll continue with Melanie, maybe to try to go deeper another stage?
Yes, so me coming from Google, what's always interesting to me is the way technology can improve the lives of people. At this point, Melanie, from your perspective, what are the challenges in terms of a greater inclusion of disabilities? Is it access? Is it cost? Is it the fact that somebody doesn't exist that should? Where's the interesting space?
I think cost is one of the things. In South Africa, data is very expensive. Everybody is not so lucky to have Wi-Fi available and have the funds to do that. That is the most I think significant challenge in South Africa as far as digital is concerned, and also then a lack of information to enable those people's education, to enable the end user to actually use it properly. So that goes again back to education and the schools, and things like that. And yeah, so that is, and also then in terms of our television programs, every person with hearing impairments does not automatically use sign language. Captions is so important, and we find that especially with information programs like the news, like for instance now in the COVID times, the news programs and the information that's going out to the public using television and so forth, they did not allow for captions, and that excludes a huge part of our population, unfortunately. And that is something so easy to do. It is actually, yeah. So that is, but you can ask me questions and I'll be able to answer as best as I can.
So access to things like captions, that's an area where technology is easy. I mean, it's work. What's interesting to me is how could we solve education and awareness? Because people are hard and busy.
They are busy, and I think after COVID we are all Zoom fatigued. And what we found in the last 2 years, especially since everything moved online, is that the different disability types, of course, have different needs. And it's almost impossible to cater for everyone on the same platform. Like we found, for instance, deaf people, they would like to use Google Meet for meetings, online meetings, where the blind people rather choose Zoom. They find that Zoom is more accessible. Teams is very difficult for both to use. So that is something that we need to streamline to make it equally accessible throughout all of those platforms. That's for meetings and work related. Yeah, that is something I think should be maybe catered for a little bit more.
Most of in South Africa, when users use surfing websites, do they usually use regular computers or they use mostly smartphones or phones?
Mostly smartphones. Computers, especially most of our population comes from disadvantaged communities, not have access to computers or internet. So the smartphone is the go-to, yes.
And do you have any laws and regulations in the fact that that you have to apply to and make sure that websites are and applications are accessible?
We have some, yes, like ICASA, they are a governing body to regulate regulations, but it's not like a disability act or a law. So at the moment, there are some court cases going on about accessibility. Yeah, so unfortunately, I cannot say that we are happy with the situation in South Africa regarding that. Yeah.
Do you think that the new legislation that's come out of Kenya will have the impact in South Africa? And if so,
sure.
how can we move that faster?
Absolutely. I think also if organizations like the United Nations and the Commonwealth and Enable and all of those can put a little bit of pressure on governments. That would certainly go a long way.
Great. And you talk about regarding digital accessibility, not only about website and application. How about the area of ATMs, kiosks, all kind of that?
Oh, I am so glad you asked that, because for me, as a person of short stature, that is one of the most troubling things. You know, for me, when I go to an ATM, not only can I can reach the buttons, but I cannot read what's on the screen. If only, you know, there's what universal access and design comes in again. If that screen was designed from the word go to be able to tilt, then a short person or a tall person can use it equally. That is something that is so close to my heart. And pay points, especially, you cannot remove the pay points to use it in your hand. You have to reach, or someone can stand behind you, especially in a country where there's a lot of crime. Someone can stand behind you and look over your shoulder and see exactly what you're doing, typing in your PIN or whatever. So that poses not only, you're a soft target. So it's not only the accessibility, it also endangers you. So yeah, and then, you know, normal accessibility in terms of environmental accessibility, that still remains a huge problem. People don't realize that by putting a ramp in and it's not the right gradient, that's equally inaccessible.
Thank you, thank you. Do we have a chance now to talk to Suleiman? So Abidemi.
We're still waiting. We're still waiting for an interpreter, unfortunately. But the
We
team
are. They're hopefully on their way, but we have some other countries joined. We have colleagues from Rwanda.
Can you put that one?
Calixe. Can you join? Unmute. Oh, I love live events, everyone.
There's a Ronald from Uganda, but he's not in the mainstream.
We have Nudipu from Uganda.
They are on the side screen, they're not on the.
Yeah, okay, let me
Go ahead.
yeah.
Go ahead. Yes, can we
Yeah,
hear?
we are. Uganda.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yes, that's Uganda.
Hello, Uganda.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you, thank you.
Christopher, you want to take now after you well fed?
mostly fed. Yeah. So welcome. Thank you for joining us. Question: we're trying to understand the state and opportunities in different countries. So, would you mind sharing the challenges and opportunities that you see in Uganda?
First of all, Uganda is one of the countries that have almost a population of 12.4% of persons with disabilities. And one of the first challenges we have, just like other colleagues have mentioned, is inaccessible technologies. Most of the technologies that we have here we use are generic, and it is very expensive for people with disabilities, especially those with sensory disabilities, to afford them. However, there has been efforts to the persons with disability organizations here in Uganda to pressurize the government to waive taxes on most of the specialized gadgets that people with disabilities would use. For example, if we want to import some of the machines that are evident that they are usable for people with visual impairment, deaf people, and the rest, you have to link with the responsible Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Movement and Uganda Revenue Authority to ensure that there is some kind of a waiver, but it takes a little bit long. The fact that they don't know some of these gadgets, you have to educate them. You know, it takes that long. meaning there is need to sensitize them over these gadgets. Secondly, utilizing mobility, transport. For example, none of our zebra crossing or traffic lights have audioized systems that could help a blind person to cross the road alone. And our traffic is so heavy. But we have also known that in other countries, these things have worked. You are free to move alone on the road, but it is not possible in Uganda for a blind person. It's in fact more of a risk. So we are trying to also advocate for review of the traffic law to ensure that it is sensitive to pedestrians with visual impairment and other disabilities that may not be able to use the generic traffic kind of symbols or lights.
Hello?
Hello?
Please continue.
Oh yes, then we also have the issue of education. Apparently government has embarked on promoting e-learning, and children now in primary schools have started using computers and other technologies to facilitate their learning. And this was so much from the time of COVID, where children were learning online. But we realized that people with sensory disabilities are lost out because of the inaccessible technologies that we are using. Our colleagues, the deaf, were not able to utilize information that was relayed on televisions. First of all, they are giving you 40 minutes, and this is more of business. For airtime of 40, somebody would be running this thing at a very terrific speed. If you have not picked, then it is very terrible for somebody who has hearing impairment. And there was no sign language interpretation on lessons relayed, so it was really a challenge. And then we also have, of course, in Uganda, apparently, the advantage we have the Persons with Disabilities Act, which was adopted in 2020, and it has provisions that relate to technology, education, health, and I think we are going to use this as a very important tool to pressurize and advocate for change, digitalize the environment for people with disabilities to be able to participate inclusively in societal life. So it's our hope that even the drafting of the national ICT policy, we participated recently and gave our views of how people with disabilities should be included into this policy, their needs. And we are encouraging government to visit other countries before this policy is adopted to see exactly what happens there and the possibilities. Sometimes the assumption has been that addressing needs of people with disabilities is expensive, but we said human rights must be expensive if everybody must access opportunities. It's not all about money, but it's about achieving. What do you want your citizenries to be? What life do you want them to be? Before we think about money, we need to think about the lives of these people. If they are part of society, then the rest would work itself. They are taxpayers. Me, I'm a worker, and the rest of the colleagues that we have here, we pay taxes as people with disabilities. Then we deserve the environment that others benefit from. So when it comes to lifts, these elevators, very few that have audioized control panels that can tell you if you're on floor 1, floor 2, floor 3, something like that. I think we are beginning to see change under the Building Control Act that was adopted in 2015. I think the construction departments are beginning to realize that access to physical environment is very crucial. And we are pressurizing government to put it in the architectural schools that are training constructors. Architectures must learn right from the start that when you're constructing a public facility, or any other person's facility. It must be universal. The principles of universality, usability, and of course, other aspects must be conditional in every facility that people in the country must use. So really, the journey is long, but at least we also have hope. With the laws that we now have, it's a matter of implementation. The challenge we have has also been implementation. And that's why the persons with disabilities organizations are very important here. The journey that we have moved is attributed to some of these organizations like NUDIPU and our membership. We have a membership of about 14 persons, 14 organizations of different disability categories that join forces to advocate for our rights. But we're also beginning to gain from the mainstream organizations. And we are really moving a promising journey. And this is a call. This forum or this conference is an eye-opener to us. That if we jointly, I think I put in the chat, I was even proposing as Nudipu, we are proposing that we have a forum or a committee in Africa that must be a watchdog for promoting, for countries that are progressing in promoting digital technology, assistive technologies for persons with disabilities. And we might find some kind of an evaluation. All countries' governments must have indicators that deliberately check accessibility in different aspects of technology, physical environment, and other areas. That's briefly I can say for now.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a comprehensive description. But actually, I want to ask you, what is your wishes to actually make a big impact, a big change, you know, for what you have now, that, you know, let's say what you really wish to, what do you think should happen? Is it about money? It's about laws and regulation? It's about education? What action needed to do in order that the digital accessibility will actually be happening in over there?
One, the government, our government must expedite the formulation process of the national information and communication technology policy, so that it is used as a legal tool to demand change. Secondly, we are requesting government to develop or formulate regulations, because already we have the Act, the Persons with Disabilities Act. Now we are demanding regulations for its implementation. And I think the process is ongoing. Yeah. Once this is in place, it will be mandatory for any department, any line ministry, any service provider to ensure that they comply with all that it requires persons with disabilities to access opportunities, services, and also be actively productive members of our society. All we need now is a just and fair society where persons with disabilities live an independent life. Our life or participation must not be by chance, but should be by choice. I must choose to take whatever I want, and the technology must be the limit. The sky must be the limit for the technologies to support us, and not for us to look for what must support our participation in society.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, Christopher, maybe we'll try again, Suleiman.
Hello.
Hello.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you for a wonderful conference and discussion. I don't know if I may ask a question. I'm in Rwanda. My name is Papi Siwamana. I'm from Singhanzi, Rwanda. And we are following, we've been following since in the morning, the conversation that we are going on. But we wonder, how can we replicate this and put it in the local context? For example, the standard that were launched today, how can we do the same? I who are speaking, I'm one of the board of directors in the Rwanda Standard Board here in Rwanda. I have a visual impairment, but this is something that can boost or enhance the life of a person with disability. So how can we replicate the same here in Rwanda? That's my worry.
Okay. Mr. Sigo Moose, are you the interpreter for Suleiman?
Yes, say Papi, as simple as that.
Okay.
Papi. Sibomana Papi.
Okay, let's start with Suleiman. Christopher, take a lead here with questions.
Mr. Suleiman?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, everyone. This is Suleiman from Nigeria.
can you turn off your speaker? Are you
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Mr. Suleiman?
Okay, when talking about assistive devices,
Tungenda mute. Gisa mute kuko byari biri. Nitwe turi kuvuga.
Are you in the same room? Are you in the same room?
yeah, Suleiman is a deaf man, and this is Suleiman is the operator speaking.
Yeah, but are you in the same room?
Okay. Can I go on? Okay, yes. I think we can go on now.
Okay, that's for you.
Can you hear me?
Bisaba ahubwo
Okay, for Nigeria, for Nigeria, we have over 35 million persons with disability, which cut across different clusters. We have the deaf, we have the deaf blind, we have persons with physical disability, we have the blind. But the key factor that we need to consider is assessing digital technology is the policies. The policies which we presently do not have. We have ratified the UNCRPD, optional protocol, and it spoke about assessing technology for all, and we need internet services to access some devices for different operations. So we need policies as persons with disability that will be designed a more inclusive policy and accessible policies for us to access digital technology. The disability law in Nigeria made provision and spoke about the importance of access to communication without leaving anyone behind. But it's in its implementation process presently, because most telecommunication companies in Nigeria have not started making provision for access for persons with disability when it has to do with communication. Service providers, service delivery, they are yet to implement access to communication process. Recently, we developed an inclusive education policy, which has to do with children with disability, and it spoke about accessing technology. And presently, we are at the draft stage. We are trying to work on best practices, the universal design, which we hope it will capture everything that has to do with persons with disability. And also for the banking system, they have online platform that are accessible to blind, that supports services access for blind persons. Though it still have a lot of issues that we battle with our internet connections here in Nigeria, because there are places where they don't have readily access to internet. For example, the grassroots. Yeah, it seems I'm having issues with my network connection. So at the grassroots level, there is no access for them. There are no access to information and strong connections. For example, presently now, the network is kind of fluctuating, and this is an important meeting which we were supposed to participate. And so service providers need to make a proper regulation, proper universal service provision, because most of them does not know how to provide service for persons with disability. There is no priority given to persons with disability. So there are sometimes that services will be given in audio, and it will not be accessible to deaf person, and it will be given in video, it will not be accessible to blind persons. So one of the examples of what we are discussing is what is happening presently. So how universally accessible is the digital technology to all persons with disability? We pay for the internet services, we pay for taxes, we pay for things that are not readily available for our use. So if universal design is considered when designing all these services, it will make life easy for everybody, and it will be easily accessible without any problem. So we at JONAP, Joint National Association of Persons with Disability in Nigeria, we've been advocating for a strong universal access for persons with disability on the same platform as every other person, so as not to get stuck in any area. Similarly, when it comes to transfer from schools, it's very key. Inclusive education is very important. Our children with disability need to access internet, need to access digital technology for them to be able to improve. And presently, universally, globally, the best practice should be adopted. And the global practice presently is the use of technology for education. So thank you very much. I'm so sorry about the network.
Thank you so much for your thoughts, Suleiman. What if I hear correctly, or what I'm extracting is there's two things that are common between each of our presenters. It's the use of technology as a bridge. Technology helps solve some of these problems, but there's also a deep expectation that the government has to require action, to force action. And what's interesting to me is today in this event, we see Africa's first ICT regulation be passed. So I think now is an interesting time to drive other governments to take this and act now and move forward and leapfrog other places where they don't have such regulations. So a question, we unfortunately need to wrap up because the next session is about to start, but I wanted to leave this with you. Think about two things. How can technology make your life better? How can technology, like cell phones, like magnifiers, be creative in terms of the solutions you can find for yourself? Because government can't always do that for you. But what the government is good at is requiring and enforcing equality. Now, all governments may not have the practice that to do this deeply and thoughtfully, but stay vigilant, stay active, stay engaged. I've been so impressed with the passionate descriptions we've had today, both in the sessions and here in this Zoom call. So please stay engaged, keep going, and we can make this place better together. Yuval, any last comments on your side? You're mute, Yuval.
And, it's very interesting to see such a large area in the world that on one hand uses technology, on the other hand, it's not accessible enough, to say the least. And I think the Western world, which is leading this area, should evaluate and think how we can make Africa accessible, technology, digital accessibility implemented faster, to use all the experience that the world have already have and make a shortcut, putting them, in fast forward way, advanced in being used. And as we said, it's infrastructure, it's making the technologies accessible, and it's education. And regarding education, what I think, Christopher and guys, is that we should try to find a way to develop things that you don't have to educate about it. So it's initiative. It's so simple, you just take it and use it. And this is something that we also have to get better in that, because if we have to educate each one and one how to use accessible technology, it takes a long time. Many people just can't do it, and it's expensive. We should find a way to be very, very simple, so it's easy to handle and use. but definitely we should also find a way to do it, to implement it much, much faster in such a large area with so many users in the world. Christopher.
I agree wholeheartedly. Suleiman, you had a question?
Yes. Yeah, from observation, one of the things we need to look at is the country and the region. They have different specific needs based on their grassroots. Majority of persons with disability lives in the grassroots level. And again, technology has not gotten to them. So we need to look at using homemade products, homemade technology that can fit and match their needs at that level.
Yeah.
And it is very important for us to look at this. The need to collaborate with implementing partners to support the production of this at the grassroots level.
Yeah.
I believe you're absolutely right. You can't look at a company like Google to create a solution that will meet the need of everybody in Uganda who's deaf. You need to have the community build for the community because they understand the problem and they understand the solutions. Companies like Google, we can create technology that they can use. So it's one of the reasons why I'm here in Africa today, in Europe today, is to try to understand how Google's technology can be refactored, can be adjusted to meet the needs of entrepreneurs, the hustlepreneurs throughout Africa to solve our own problems. That's, I think, the long-term, that's the scalable way of doing these things.
Christopher, I think Mr. Sigamo wants to speak to.
Please.
Yeah, greetings from Cameroon. I am Camden Justin, and I've been following up since morning. I'm so lucky that I had the email to join the forum, Inclusive Africa 2022. So it's very, very interesting, and it's really mind-blowing what we are all discussing. And I've been thinking of how I can, since I have the training center, I've been thinking of how I can make a little bit of information available for the disabled. But so far, lack of information around has made me not to very much include them in my system. But today, I've taken note of how I can do to get in contact with the members of my communities who are disabled, like getting to NGOs as one of the participants spoke, Mr. Jenison. So I know I have an assignment now to get to some NGOs and ask them if they have a list of certain disabled that I can include in my training center for free, because I do IT training programs for basic computer awareness, for example, and then advanced computer training, hardware, software, web development, and all that. So it's very, very, very important what we're doing today, and I really like the initiative.
Thank you so much for your comments. It's important that you realize that it is not up to the people with disabilities only to do things for themselves. It's up for allies and friends and supporters to come together and do these things together.
Tell us a little about your organization in Cameroon. You are on mute.
Yeah, I didn't get that. What you say?
Can you tell us a little about your organization in Cameroon?
KG Computer Training Center is it's a small enterprise. Back then in 2016, I created it for increasing of IT communication between people, because you know our country is having a kind of political conflict at the moment the English section of English speaking regions, they are actually in a conflict with the government and a lot of insecurity. So families are really thrown apart, and many people living without information. They don't get to communicate with their families, especially because of lack of appropriate ICT tools. I think with my conception of things and my training, one can be able to communicate with the family using these modern tools that we have. Many people have cell phones and computers, but they don't know actually how to make the good use of it, make good use of all its aspects. So the training center is really built for all individuals, aging, young ones. In fact, everybody has a program from very primary level to professionals. Yeah, I have a staff of teachers, I have a staff of members, also virtual trainings, since we have internet connection with fiber optics here, and the place at least is really accessible to many people online. It's just that the lack of information, as I said, it has made me really not open to helping many other people. Yeah, I really look forward to integrating a system where I can have more disabled or impaired people. Since today I learned that a blind somebody can use a computer, I was like, how do they get to read what is on the screen? How do they get to do that fast? So in this forum, I've learned a lot. I've seen how someone blind can actually give a speech, can actually type, can actually make use of ICT tools, even more than someone with all his senses. So it's really great. It's really great.
So we're supposed to have. We were told that we were supposed to be done at this point, but it seems like we're still going.
We have another guest. Just gave up. Maybe give him a minute. Mr. Abene Jayo, can you? We are closing the session, but you just came in, so tell us about your organization, and something smart for the session, for closing the session.
Yes, thank you. This is Abayne Gujo from Ethiopia, from the Ethiopian National Disability Federation. I'm the executive director of the federation, and I'm happy joining this very important session. When we think about accessibility on technology and accessibility on any other technological means, we from Ethiopia are still struggling for people with disabilities to ensure accessible information for people with disabilities. But now I'm really proud with organizer that they really on time, that we are really in need of this very important technology system for people with disabilities to ensure inclusion. We as an Ethiopian, before a year, we visited information center, accessible information center in Cairo, Egypt, just to learn and share experience from them. And it was very amazing that how they are working closely with the government, especially with the ICT ministry. And we were being invited even by the ICT ministry of the Egyptians. And it was very, very interesting, and we learned a lot. Then now we are trying to convince here our government that to take a part on this development. Besides this, maybe for me, this session is really very, very important session, just like to know each other, even from the root to know each other, where we are, how the technological development is in our Africa. So from our side, we are really committed to try and to ensure technology for people with disabilities, especially for youth with disabilities. Nowadays, in our country, people with disabilities, especially youth people with disabilities in the university level and in other schools are suffering a lot because they didn't get a chance to learn even in our country for blind people, there is no provision of braille and something technology, even not technological aspect, even the manual part is not providing. So our people is suffering a lot. So that's why it's very serious for us. And we want to take it very serious. And this platform may be contribute a lot. From early morning, still I was learning a lot that what's going on in the world. So this is really a wonderful opportunity for me to learn a lot than to say more on these issues. So we are here to committed that to try to ensure the technological services for people with disabilities equal with others. So as I heard from Haben this morning that inability is a major problem for us than anything else. So we need to be try to ensure inability on our community. So I think this is all about, yes.
Well, thank you very much. It was amazing that you came to this session right on time. But I understand we have to finish. And I want to share with you before Christopher will close, to say from my side that when I'm hearing and meeting such leaders like you guys, I'm pretty optimistic about you guys making Africa more accessible digitally. And, you know, I'm sure many of us around would love to help in any way they can. So keep on the effort and good work. And Christopher, close it.
Thank you all for joining us today. We've learned a lot. We've learned that the challenges in the different countries are common. Technology is seen as a solution, but it's too expensive. We don't have the technological infrastructure to have all of the latest and greatest tools. So this is the opportunity for the countries to help themselves and using technology from Google, but not just Google. There's also Microsoft and Amazon that have interesting technologies. What's exciting though is there's a desire to fix problems. There's a need to fix problems, and it's the community and allies of the community that are coming together to try to solve these things. So that's why I'm optimistic that we have the opportunity to make great change in terms of solving the problems. The next step is getting the governments involved. Now that Kenya has their ICT regulations, let's get more and more countries to use the same regulations or very similar. I do want to give you one piece of advice though. The more different the regulations are from country to country, the more difficult it is for companies to be able to give you a choice, opportunities and options. So realize that if you have the same regulations, a company like HP with their printers, if they want to make an accessible printer and your regulations are different enough, you might get one thing that meets the accessibility requirements. But if you share common regulations with other countries, you'll have more choice. The end result is the same as long as your needs are met. So where possible, be common. Where critical, be unique. So, and collaborate with your governments to have these things done, because you will not see the action and cultural shift without the governmental change. So you need the government to change the society and culture and require the services that are there, and that the technologies help be the bridge between what a person can do and what the society that exists can't support because it was done without consideration. So thank you all for joining us.